How much has my 2006 Porsche Cayman S cost me for 1 full year? I think the final figure will shock everyone. Not a very pleasant day for filming out there today. It's now November. I don't know when this video will go out. Might even be after Christmas. So if it has been Christmas, I hope you had a good one. And if it isn't Christmas, then I hope you have a great Christmas. And I've covered both bases. Before we get into talking about what exactly I've spent on the car, and as I said earlier, this figure is going to shock everyone on my channel, and it's not necessarily for a bad reason either. Yes, I know. Normally it's doom and gloom. Not today, not today. I want to talk about how many miles I've done in the car, what I've done with it this year to give you a bit of context as to the wear and tear on the vehicle. I've done around 7,000 miles this year, which is a bit under what I normally do. Normally do about 10, but I've not done any sort of big road trips this year at all, so the miles are a bit lower than they ordinarily would be. The car tends to average around 21 mpg, so even doing 7,000 miles in it is quite expensive actually. But every single mile is well worth it in the Cayman, that is for sure. During this year, I've done a couple of really epic things actually, so no big road trips. Oh my God, leaves. Well, that's the first time that's happened. There were so many leaves, the traction control fully came on, and that was weird. It was like I was on ice. Anyway, this year I have done one track day at Blyton Park. You'll have seen that. It was a couple of videos ago with JM on cars. It was a fantastic day actually, and it really made me realise how good this car was. But it also revealed some issues with the suspension on it, which I then got fixed later in the year. I also completed my first ever hill climb at Harewood House, courtesy of Porsche Club GB. They invited me along and I was able to blast the car up Harewood House hill climb a good few times, and that was just, well, incredible. What an experience. So if you haven't taken your Porsche Cayman out onto a hill climb or onto a track, then I suggest that is on your list for next year, because it's so much fun and it makes you realise how capable these cars are. But aside from that, I've not really done any sort of huge road trips. I mean, I've been down south a few times, I've been to Cafe and Machine a couple of times, but nothing major. No European travel this year. That is all for next year. So 7,000 miles completed, and the only other thing that's changed really is my insurance has gone up a tiny bit, and the road tax has gone up, which is not surprising. So what we'll do is I'll pull over and we'll talk about everything I've spent on it in the year, and we'll decide whether or not it's worth it. I think it probably is. I think it probably is. Now, there are a couple of things that you have to pay for with all cars that you drive on the UK roads. And the first one is insurance. And while I understand this is going to vary from person to person, depending on your circumstances, where you live, how many miles you do, etc., this, for me, is very, very cheap. My insurance is extremely cheap, considering this car is a 3.4 litre Porsche Cayman S. It's incredibly cheap. I park it on the drive in a very safe place. I do around 10,000 miles a year. I've built up around 15 years of no claims bonuses, and I've been driving for, well, as long as I can remember. That means when the renewal price came through, although it's slightly up on last year, it still works out only £400. £400 to insure this car. I think that's incredible. However, this being the 2006 3.4 does have its drawbacks. That is road tax. When I bought this car, the road tax was £590, I think, or thereabouts. Expensive, really bad, really painful. However, it's now gone up. And since I bought this car, it's gone up year on year, and it's now reached the grand total of £760. 760 quid to road tax this. It's insane. When you consider that they're talking about pay per mile and things, it's just mental. This is mental. 760 quid. However, when you combine the two together, It's not too bad, just over £1,000 to tax and insure it. I think there'll be a lot of people watching this video that are thinking, wow, I pay like £1,000 just to insure it. You're very lucky. I probably am, but let me know in the comments, what do you pay for your insurance? I think mine's a bargain, and it's kind of made more expensive by the fact that I have stupid amounts of road tax to pay for. But overall, the general running cost for this car, excluding fuel, is around £1,100 per year. And then that brings us on to the next things. When things go wrong and wear out, we'll go for a little drive, I'll grab a coffee, and we'll sit and talk about everything I've spent on the car. Because this year has been like no other year. Brilliant. Yep. Thank you very much. Cheers. Free drink! It's always better when it's free. I didn't realise I'd accumulated quite so many points at Costa, but it turns out I have. Right, we're going to shelter in here away from the rain. Normally I like to make a cinematic video to explain some of these things, but unfortunately it's now November, awful weather, and I don't want to get wet. So have this instead of cinematic. How about that? You like that? Yeah. That's good. Right, let's get into it. The bits that I've spent on this car this year. And the first thing that's going to surprise everyone is for the first 3 months, I spent a total of £0 on this car. Apart from the usual running cost, it cost nothing. January, February, March, no bills, no unexpected surprises, nothing. Basically free motoring. And then April came around. I looked at the state of the alloy wheels and thought, they need doing. Now, a lot of you will be saying, that's not a bill, that's not something you need to do. But in my opinion, it is. When you're driving around in an old car like this, and the wheels start to look a bit tatty, it's important to keep on top of maintenance, keep on top of those sort of things, because that's what devalues the car, ages it, and just makes it a bit ropey. So I do feel like a wheel refurb is an essential purchase. Luckily, the cost of this wasn't actually all that bad. I spent £290 having these wheels powder coated in matte silver, and I think a lot of you agreed it looked absolutely stunning. Well worth every single penny it cost. The months that followed, again, were pretty plain sailing. And in June, July and August, I spent nothing on the car. Yes, nothing! This car is basically like driving around in a Prius at the moment. It's costing me no money to run. Everything seemed to be spent last year when I spent thousands on it, and this year seemed to have had a very, very easy ride. And I knew something was bound to go wrong. And it did. But thankfully it didn't cost that much. Because in September I was driving around and I could hear what sounded like a weird rattle coming from behind here. A rattle or a burble, or it just sounded wrong. It's very difficult to describe, but it sounded like water burbling. It was odd. And then a bit of a grinding noise. Anyway, I thought it sounded weird, and due to the placement of it right here, I thought, I wonder if that's the water pump, because it just doesn't sound right. And a water pump failing is a disaster, and it would result me being at the side of the road or the car overheating or worse. So I got it looked at, got it taken into the garage and said, I believe it's the water pump, but it could be a pulley, a bearing or anything, so you can have a quick look at that. And they did, and they found I was correct. I was right, it was a water pump. And we fitted a non-genuine one because the genuine ones are about £800. And I know a lot of you will be arguing in the comments now saying, you idiot, why do you not fit a genuine one? Well, the price was only £354 fitted, which I think is pretty good. A genuine water pump on its own is around £500. So I think going non-genuine on this for this occasion, yeah, it was definitely worthwhile. After that, the car felt pretty much fine, but the garage did note that it had some wear on its suspension components. There was a bit of knocking appearing, which I knew about, and everything was starting to get a bit worn out. So I got them to check over that. And they came back and said that the subframe was completely rotten. And they couldn't get the bottom arms off to actually look at replacing those because the subframe would get destroyed. And the subframes are £2,000 from Design 911 because Porsche no longer have any. So I was left in a situation where I was potentially facing a £5,000 bill. What I did instead was go to one of my trusted local Porsche specialists, Sam Lander Porsche, took it in there and said, this is the situation. My local garage, who's very good at servicing it and fitting bits and bobs like the exhaust and stuff, they were saying that the subframe needed doing, and it's a very complex job. And if you break the subframe, you're into a whole world of pain. So I took it to Sam Lander. for him to check it over, be really careful in trying to get the bottom arms off, and give the car basically a full suspension refresh. And this is where the big bill of the year came from. And this bill came to £2,100. But they did replace a lot of stuff. I'll put some pictures on the screen now, but they replaced the lower arms, they replaced the coffin arms, they replaced the top mounts, they did all sorts. This car had loads of suspension components done, full geometry setup, and a new tyre. So overall, £2,100 isn't all that bad. After that, the car needed a service, but I did a major one last year. I think that was around £500 or £600, again at my local garage that did the water pump. And this year we decided to do a minor service. I do it every year, despite the car not wanting one. And that came to around £300. So not bad for a minor service, just oil, filters, and that type of stuff. And that's it. That's all I've spent on the car this year. Which means if you include the repairs, and that's all, £2,700 for repairs. 2,700 quid is not bad. If you factor in the other bits and pieces, like the running cost of £1,100, you're up to around £3,800. And one thing I haven't done, which someone told me to do, was to work out how much that is a month, which I'll do now. This is live. This is very, very organised video, as you can see. £3,866 is the amount. Divide that by 12, gives me a total of £322 per month. But that includes repairs, that includes your insurance, and road tax on a 2006 Cayman S. £322 a month. Some people are paying that for finance on a Vauxhall Corsa. Well, I don't know, maybe not a Corsa, but you know what I mean. A Mocha, maybe. And yet here I am driving around in a mid-engined rear-wheel drive Porsche for 322 quid a month. And there's no devaluing happening. This car seems to be maintaining its poor valuation, and it's just holding that forever. So, yeah. What do you guys think? Do you think that was a lot of money, or do you think it's actually a relative bargain when you consider how good these cars are? And having all that suspension stuff is not normal. I accept that it's an additional thing that you wouldn't normally do. And maybe next year the bills will be even smaller. Or maybe the car will throw something at me that I'm not expecting. I don't know. Either way, the car's done over 80,000 miles, and this year the total cost was £3,800. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? Is that good or bad? I think good. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry this video hasn't been its usual standard due to the piss poor weather we've got at the moment, but it's given you all the facts you need to make a judgment on whether you should consider buying one of these glorious cars. I think I know the answer. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.